Dr. Sarah Chen pressed her back against the cold metal wall of the research station's medical bay, her heart hammering as the emergency lights cast everything in crimson. The station shuddered violently as another blast hit the outer hull. Through the reinforced viewport, she could see the sleek alien ships circling like predators, their weapons charging for another strike. "All personnel to emergency pods immediately," the automated voice echoed through the corridors. But Sarah knew it was too late. The evacuation pods had been destroyed in the first wave of the attack. She was trapped on Research Station Omega-7, along with whatever remained of the scientific team studying the newly discovered Keth Mori ruins on the planet below. The medical bay doors hissed open, and Sarah's breath caught in her throat. A massive figure stumbled through the entrance, blood streaming from multiple wounds across his chest and arms. The being stood nearly 8 feet tall, with skin that seemed to shift between deep blue and purple depending on the light. His 4 arms hung at his sides, 2 clutching, primitive-looking weapons, the others pressed against his injuries. This was a Keth Mori warrior, one of the ancient race whose civilization they had been studying. Sarah had only seen them in archaeological recordings and ancient murals. They were supposed to be extinct, wiped out by some catastrophe thousands of years ago. Yet here one stood before her, very much alive and bleeding profusely. The warrior's eyes, large and silver like twin moons, fixed on her. He spoke in a language she didn't understand. His voice deep and resonant even in his weakened state. When she didn't respond, he switched to broken Standard Galactic. "Human healer," he said, the words coming with obvious difficulty. "The Metal Sky Hunters. They seek the sacred stones. You must help me stop them." Sarah's medical training kicked in, overriding her fear and confusion. She could see that his wounds were severe, possibly fatal. The purple blood flowing from his injuries was unlike anything in her xenobiology textbooks, but blood was blood, and this being was dying. "I'm a doctor," she said, moving toward him with her hands raised to show she meant no harm. "Let me help you." The warrior stumbled, and Sarah rushed forward to support him, despite the fact that he outweighed her by at least 300 pounds. Together they made it to the medical table. As Sarah began examining his wounds, she realized they weren't from the current attack. These injuries were older, partially healed but reopened by recent stress. "The raiders above," the warrior gasped as Sarah worked. "They come for the Heartstones, sacred to my people. If they take them, many worlds will die." Sarah's hands moved efficiently, cleaning and assessing the damage. She had treated dozens of alien species during her career, but the Keth Mori physiology was unique. His blood seemed to shimmer with an inner light, and she could feel warmth radiating from the wounds. "What's your name?" she asked, trying to keep him conscious as she worked. "Zethkar," he replied. "Last guardian of the temple below. My people. They trusted me to protect the stones. I have failed." "You're not dead yet," Sarah said firmly, preparing a coagulant injection. "And neither am I. What are these Heartstones the raiders want?" Zethkar's breathing was becoming labored. "Power sources beyond your understanding. In wrong hands, they become weapons that can crack planets, drain suns. My ancestors hid them here when the Great Plague came. Only Keth Mori blood can activate the temple's defenses." Sarah paused in her work. "But you're injured. You've lost too much blood already." "Yes," Zethkar said, his voice growing weaker. "This is why I came to find your people. In the ancient texts, there are stories of humans. Your blood, it carries something special. Something that can substitute for Keth Mori blood in the sacred rituals." The station shook again, more violently this time. Sarah could hear the sound of cutting tools working on the outer hull. The raiders were trying to break in. "Even if that's true," Sarah said, "I can't just give you my blood and expect it to work. I don't know anything about your rituals or technology." Zethkar struggled to sit up, his silver eyes meeting hers with desperate intensity. "The ritual is simple. but it must be performed at the temple's heart, deep below the planet's surface. Your blood, mixed with the sacred waters, can activate the defenses that will destroy the raiders' ships. That's assuming I survive long enough to get down there, Sarah pointed out, and assuming your theory about human blood is correct. A loud bang echoed through the station. The raiders had breached the outer hull. "There is a way," Zethkar said urgently, "but it requires trust. My people's technology can temporarily merge our life forces. Your blood will gain the properties needed for the ritual, but you will also share my strength and knowledge." Sarah stared at him. "You're talking about some kind of blood bond?" "Yes, but it is not without risk. The process could kill you if your body rejects the merger, and if we succeed, you will be forever changed. The bond cannot be undone." Heavy footsteps echoed in the corridor outside. The raiders were getting closer. Sarah looked down at her hands, still stained with Zethkar's purple blood. She thought about her life, her research, her quiet existence studying alien cultures from a safe distance. Then she thought about the worlds that would die if these heartstones fell into the wrong hands. "What do I need to do?" she asked. Zethkar reached into a pouch on his belt and withdrew a small crystalline device. It pulsed with soft blue light. "Place your hand on the crystal and repeat the words I say. But once we begin, there is no turning back." Sarah took the crystal. It was warm to the touch and seemed to vibrate with energy. "I understand," she said. Zethkar began to chant in his ancient language, and Sarah felt the crystal grow warmer. When he nodded, she repeated the alien words as best she could. The crystal blazed with brilliant light, and suddenly pain shot through her entire body. Her blood felt like it was on fire. She could sense Zethkar's presence in her mind, his memories and knowledge flowing into her consciousness. She saw images of his world before the plague, great cities that reached toward the stars, his people's deep connection to the cosmic forces that powered their technology. At the same time, she felt her human essence merging with something far older and more powerful. Her DNA was rewriting itself, adapting to accommodate the Kethmori genetic markers necessary for the ritual. When the light faded, Sarah felt different, stronger. She could sense energy patterns she had never perceived before, and she instinctively understood the basic principles of Kethmori technology. Zethkar was watching her carefully. "How do you feel?" Sarah flexed her hands, noting that her blood now had a faint purple tint beneath her skin. "Like I could run a marathon or solve quantum equations, maybe both at the same time." "Good. The merger was successful. But we must hurry. The raiders will be here soon. And we need to reach the temple. How do we get down there with hostile forces crawling all over the station?" Zethkar smiled for the first time, showing teeth that gleamed like polished stone. "We don't hide from them. We fight through them." Sarah was about to point out that she was a doctor, not a warrior, when she realized she could feel Zethkar's combat knowledge flowing through her mind. She understood weapons she had never held, tactics she had never studied. "This is going to be interesting," she murmured. The medical bay doors exploded inward, and 3 armored figures stormed in. They wore sleek black suits that seemed to absorb light, and their weapons hummed with deadly energy. Sarah could see their faces behind transparent visors, humanoid but wrong, with too pale skin and eyes like black holes. "The Kethmori and the human," one of them said in accented Standard Galactic. "Lord Vexthul will be pleased. You will both come with us." "I don't think so," Sarah said, surprised by the calm confidence in her own voice. She moved faster than she had ever moved in her life, ducking under the first raider's weapon and striking him in the chest with her palm. There was a flash of purple energy, and the raider was thrown backward through the doorway. Zethkar was already in motion, his massive frame moving with surprising grace. His weapons, which Sarah now recognized as sonic disruptors, sent waves of force that shattered the remaining raiders' armor. "How did I do that?" Sarah asked, staring at her hands. "Kethmori combat techniques are now part of your knowledge," Zethkar explained. "But we must move quickly. More will come." They rushed through the corridors of the station, Sarah's enhanced senses allowing her to detect the raiders' positions before they encountered them. When they did meet resistance, the combination of Sarah's newfound abilities and Zethkar's warrior training made them nearly unstoppable. They reached the station's transport bay, where a single shuttle remained intact. As they prepared to launch toward the planet's surface, Sarah caught sight of the main raider ship through the viewport. It was massive, black as the void between stars and covered in weapon ports. "What are we up against down there?" she asked as Zethkar piloted the shuttle away from the station. "Lord Vexithul commands a fleet of void hunters," Zethkar replied grimly. "They are scavengers who prey on dead civilizations, stealing their technology and selling it to the highest bidder. They have been searching for Kethmori artifacts for decades. And now, they've found the biggest prize of all." "Yes, but they do not understand what they seek to steal. The Heartstones are not mere power sources. They are connected to the fundamental forces of creation itself. In the wrong hands, they could unravel the fabric of space-time." Sarah felt a chill that had nothing to do with the shuttle's life support systems. "And you think my blood can stop them?" "I believe your blood, combined with the sacred ritual, can awaken the temple's guardians. Ancient constructs that have slept for millennia, waiting for the day when the stones would need protection again." The shuttle broke through the planet's atmosphere, and Sarah could see the Kethmori ruins spread out below them. What she had thought were simple archaeological sites from orbit revealed themselves to be part of a vast complex that stretched for kilometers in every direction. At the center of it all stood a massive pyramid, its surface covered in symbols that now glowed with soft blue light. Sarah could feel the power emanating from it, calling to something in her transformed blood. "The temple," Zethkar said, "and there, at its base, the raiders have already begun their excavation." Sarah could see the black ships landed around the pyramid, their crews working frantically to break through the ancient barriers protecting the entrance. "They're close to breaking through," she observed. "Then we have very little time," Zethkar replied, setting the shuttle down in a concealed valley several kilometers from the temple. "Are you ready for this, Sarah-Chen? Once we enter that temple, we will either save countless worlds or die in the attempt." Sarah checked the small vial of her now transformed blood that Zethkar had prepared for the ritual. It pulsed with purple light, responding to her heartbeat. "Let's go wake up some ancient guardians," she said. The ancient corridors of the Kethmori temple stretched endlessly into darkness, lit only by the faint purple glow emanating from Sarah's transformed blood. She and Zethkar moved silently through passages that had remained untouched for thousands of years, their footsteps muffled by dust that had once been the remains of his people. Sarah could feel the temple responding to their presence. Symbols carved into the walls began to glow softly as they passed, and she could hear a low humming that seemed to come from the very stones themselves. The knowledge flowing through her mind from the blood bond told her that the temple was alive in its own way, a massive organic computer built from crystallized consciousness. "The raiders are above us," Zethkar whispered, his enhanced hearing picking up the sounds of drilling and excavation. "They have broken through the outer chambers, but the inner sanctum remains sealed." "How much time do we have?" Sarah asked, consulting the mental map that had appeared in her mind when they entered the temple. "Perhaps an hour before they reach the Heartstone's resting place. But the path to the ritual chamber is treacherous. Many guardians still sleep in these halls, and they do not distinguish between friend and enemy if they are awakened improperly." As if summoned by his words, a section of the wall beside them began to shift and change. Ancient mechanisms powered by forces Sarah's human mind could barely comprehend, activated for the first time in millennia. A construct emerged from the wall, standing 8 feet tall and shaped vaguely like a Keth-Mori warrior, but made entirely of the same crystalline material as the temple walls. The Guardian's eyes blazed with golden light as it scanned them. Sarah felt the blood bond pulse with energy, and somehow she understood that the construct was reading their genetic signatures. "Guardian of the first threshold," she said in the ancient Keth-Mori language, the words flowing naturally from her lips. "We seek passage to the heart chamber. The sacred stones are in danger." The construct tilted its head, studying her with those blazing eyes. When it spoke, its voice was like the sound of wind through crystal caves. "Human blood flows in mortal veins, yet carries the signature of the ancestor kings. How is this possible?" "The blood bond of necessity." Zethkar stepped forward. "I am the last guardian of the outer reaches. This human has accepted the burden of our people's legacy." The construct was silent for a long moment. Then it stepped aside, bowing its head in respect. "Pass, inheritors. But know that greater guardians await below, and they will not be so easily convinced." They descended deeper into the temple, following spiral ramps that seemed to wind down into the planet's very core. The air grew thicker and more charged with energy. Sarah could feel her transformed blood responding to the increasing proximity of the heartstones, her pulse quickening with each step. "Tell me about these stones," she said as they walked. "What exactly are we trying to protect?" Zethkar was quiet for a moment, gathering his thoughts. "My people were not originally from this world. We came here fleeing a great catastrophe, carrying with us the most sacred artifacts of our civilization. The heartstones are fragments of our home star, crystallized at the moment of its death." "You crystallized a dying star?" "Not just any star. Our sun was unique in the galaxy, a conscious entity that had achieved self-awareness over billions of years. When it began to die, our greatest scientists found a way to preserve its consciousness in physical form. The heartstones contain the accumulated wisdom and power of a stellar mind." Sarah stopped walking, stunned by the implications. "You're telling me those stones up there contain the consciousness of an entire star?" "Yes, and that consciousness can be awakened and directed by the proper rituals. In the hands of my people, the stones were used for healing, for terraforming dead worlds, for traveling between galaxies. But in the wrong hands, they could be used as weapons. Weapons capable of destroying solar systems. Lord Vexthul and his Void Hunters would sell that power to the highest bidder without understanding the consequences. Wars would consume the galaxy. They reached another guardian, this one larger and more elaborate than the first. Its crystalline form was inscribed with flowing scripts that hurt Sarah's eyes to look at directly. When it challenged them, Sarah found that the ancient language came less easily to her lips. This guardian required not just words, but a demonstration of worthiness. "Show us your commitment to the sacred trust," it demanded. "Prove that you will sacrifice all for the protection of the stellar consciousness." Without hesitation, Sarah drew the ritual blade that Zethkar had given her and opened a cut on her palm. Her purple-tinged blood dripped onto the Guardian's crystal surface, and immediately the construct began to change. The inscriptions on its body flared with brilliant light, and it stepped aside with something that might have been surprise. "The human blood carries true devotion," it said. "Even transformed, it retains the courage that makes your species unique among the stars. Pass, and may your sacrifice be remembered when the stars sing again." As they continued deeper, Sarah became aware of a change in the temple around them. The walls were no longer simple stone and crystal, but seemed to be made of living energy that pulsed with each beat of her heart. She could feel vast intelligences stirring in the depths below, ancient minds awakening after eons of sleep. "The Heartstones are responding to your presence," Zethkar observed. "The stellar consciousness recognizes something in your transformed blood, something it finds familiar." "What do you mean?" "I am not certain, but there are legends among my people. Stories that say humans and Kethmori share a common ancestor, a race that spread among the stars long before either of our civilizations rose. Perhaps the stellar consciousness remembers that ancient kinship." They emerged into a vast chamber, its ceiling lost in shadows high above. At the center of the room stood a raised platform surrounded by a complex array of crystalline formations. And there, floating in the exact center of the platform, were the Heartstones. Sarah had expected something impressive, but the reality took her breath away. 3 stones, each the size of a human head, floated in perfect formation above the platform. They were not quite solid, not quite energy, but something in between. As she watched, currents of light flowed between them in patterns too complex for her human mind to follow. "The stellar consciousness," Zethkar said reverently. 3 fragments of a god. But their moment of awe was interrupted by the sound of explosions from above. The raiders had broken through the temple's upper defenses and were fighting their way down toward the heart chamber. "We need to complete the ritual quickly," Sarah said, moving toward the platform. "Wait," Zethkar caught her arm. "There is one more guardian, the greatest of them all." The shadows at the far end of the chamber began to move, and something vast stepped into the light. This guardian was not crystalline like the others, but appeared to be made of living starlight. It stood 20 feet tall, its form constantly shifting and changing like a solar corona. When it spoke, its voice was the sound of cosmic winds across the void. "Who dares approach the sacred stones in this hour of darkness?" it demanded. "What mortal seeks to commune with stellar divinity?" Sarah stepped forward, her transformed blood singing with power in response to the guardian's presence. "I am Sarah Chen, human bonded to Kethmori blood. I seek to awaken the defensive protocols and protect the stellar consciousness from those who would abuse its power." "Human," the guardian mused, its starlight form shifting as it studied her. "It has been long since one of your kind walked these halls. Your ancestors knew this place, in the time before time. They helped build the first temples on a dozen worlds." "My ancestors?" "The first humans were wanderers among the stars, just as the first Kethmori were builders of worlds. Together, you and we shaped the galaxy in its youth. But that was before the Great Sundering, before your people forgot their heritage among the stars." The guardian's form began to change, becoming more solid, more recognizably humanoid. "But I see in your blood the echo of that ancient partnership. You carry not just Kethmori genetic markers, but the awakened memories of your own people's stellar heritage." Sarah felt something unlock in her mind, memories that were not her own, flooding her consciousness. She saw images of humans working alongside Kethmori on massive construction projects that spanned entire star systems. She saw the first Heartstones being created and humans helping to design the temples that would protect them. "We were partners," she breathed. "Our species worked together for thousands of years." "Until the plague came," the guardian said sadly. "The cosmic virus that destroyed most of my people also scattered yours to the primitive worlds where you forgot your origins. But the blood remembers, as it always does." The sounds of fighting were getting closer. Sarah could hear the distinctive whine of Void Hunter weapons echoing through the temple corridors. "The ritual," she said urgently. "I need to complete it before they reach us." The guardian nodded and stepped aside. "Approach the stones, inheritor of the ancient compact. Let your blood awaken what has slept too long. Sarah climbed onto the platform, feeling the power of the Heartstones washing over her. Up close, she could see that they were not simply crystallized energy, but contained actual stellar matter held in impossible configurations by forces beyond current scientific understanding. She drew the ritual blade and opened a deeper cut on her forearm, letting her transformed blood flow into the sacred pool at the base of the platform. The effect was immediate and overwhelming. The Heartstones blazed with light that filled the entire chamber. Sarah felt her consciousness expand beyond her body, touching the vast intelligence that slept within the crystallized star fragments. And that intelligence spoke to her, not in words but in pure understanding that bypassed language entirely. Young inheritor, the stellar consciousness communicated, "You carry the blood of two peoples, the courage of a species that refuses to surrender, and the wisdom to know when sacrifice is necessary. I grant you access to powers that have slept for millennia." Sarah felt changes beginning in her body, changes that went far beyond what the blood bond had accomplished. Her cellular structure was being rewritten on a fundamental level, incorporating stellar matter into her very DNA. She was becoming something new, something that had not existed since the ancient partnership between humans and Keth-Mori. The chamber filled with new guardians as the stellar consciousness awakened the temple's deepest defenses. Constructs of pure energy materialized around the platform, and Sarah could feel their readiness for battle. At that moment, Lord Vexthul and his raiders burst into the chamber, their weapons trained on the platform. The Void Hunter Lord himself was a massive creature, easily 9 feet tall, with skin like polished obsidian and eyes that glowed with artificial light. "So," he said, his voice echoing unnaturally in the sacred space, "the last Keth-Mori has found himself a human ally. How touching. But you are too late. My technicians have already analyzed the stone formations. We know how to extract them safely." "You understand nothing," Zethkar snarled, raising his weapons. "Those stones contain a living consciousness. You would be committing murder on a cosmic scale." "I would be becoming the most powerful being in the galaxy," Vexthul replied. "Seize them both. Leave the human alive. Her transformed blood might prove useful in controlling the stones." The raiders advanced, but they never reached the platform. Sarah stood up, and for the first time since the ritual began, she opened her eyes. They blazed with stellar fire. "I don't think so," she said, and her voice carried harmonics that made the crystal walls of the chamber ring like bells. She raised her hand, and energy that had been building since the dawn of the universe flowed through her transformed body. The first wave of attackers simply ceased to exist, their molecular bonds dissolved by forces that predated the formation of galaxies. Lord Vexithul stepped backward, real fear showing in his artificial eyes for the first time in centuries. "What are you?" he whispered. Sarah smiled, and starlight played around her transformed features. "I'm someone who just became very, very invested in protecting this place." The battle in the heart chamber was unlike anything Sarah could have imagined when she was still fully human. Lord Vexthul's raiders fired their most powerful weapons at her, but the energy simply dispersed harmlessly against the stellar field that surrounded her transformed body. She moved through their ranks like a force of nature, each gesture calling forth powers that had been locked away since the Keth-Mori civilization's golden age. But it wasn't just raw power that flowed through her. The stellar consciousness had granted her something far more valuable: perfect understanding of the cosmic forces at play. She could see the raiders not just as physical beings, but as patterns of energy and intention. She could perceive their weaknesses, their fears, and most importantly, their true motivations. "You're not just here for the Heartstones," she said to Lord Vexthul as his remaining forces retreated behind energy shields. Someone sent you. Someone who knows exactly what these stones can do. The Void Hunter Lord's obsidian features twisted into what might have been a smile. Clever little star-touched human. Yes, I serve a greater master, one who has waited eons for the chance to claim stellar consciousness for himself. Who? Zethkar demanded, moving to stand beside Sarah. The Devourer of Suns, Vexthul said, and his voice carried a note of genuine reverence mixed with terror. The last of the Void Lords, ancient enemy of all life, he seeks the Heartstones not for their power but for their knowledge. With the wisdom of a stellar consciousness, he could finally complete his great work. Sarah felt a chill that penetrated even her stellar-enhanced awareness. Through the blood bond with Zethkar, she could access his people's oldest memories. And she knew of the Void Lords. They were beings of pure entropy, creatures that existed to unmake creation itself. If one of them gained access to the knowledge contained in the Heartstones, the whole galaxy would be at risk, she whispered. More than that, the stellar consciousness spoke directly into her mind. With stellar knowledge, the Devourer could learn to drain the life from entire galactic clusters. Trillions of civilizations would perish. Sarah looked around the chamber. Despite her new powers, Vexthul still had dozens of raiders with him, and she could sense more ships arriving in orbit. Even with the temple's guardians awakening, they were vastly outnumbered. We need to get the Heartstones away from here, she said to Zethkar. Impossible, he replied grimly. They have been rooted in this temple for thousands of years. The ritual chambers that maintain their stability cannot be moved. Then we make our stand here. But as she spoke, Sarah felt the stellar consciousness stir within her mind, and suddenly she understood something that changed everything. Unless, she said slowly, we don't move the stones. We move the temple. Zethkar stared at her. What are you talking about? The temple isn't just a building, it's a ship. A massive, living ship that your ancestors used to travel between the stars. The entire complex is designed to fold space around itself. Through her enhanced awareness, Sarah could perceive the temple's true nature. Hidden beneath kilometers of stone and crystal were engines that worked on principles far advanced beyond anything the current galaxy had achieved. The temple was a vessel capable of traveling not just between stars, but between dimensions. The stellar consciousness can activate the temple ship, she continued. But it needs an anchor, someone to guide it through the dimensional barriers. The ritual you performed, Zethkar said, understanding dawning in his silver eyes. It didn't just awaken the defenses, it made you the temple's pilot. Sarah nodded, feeling the vast ship's systems responding to her transformed blood. But she also felt the enormous energy requirements of such a journey. Moving something the size of an entire city between dimensions would require sacrifices. I'll have to give up my humanity completely, she said quietly. To pilot the temple ship, I need to become one with the stellar consciousness. There won't be enough of me left to ever return to my old life. Sarah, no, Zethkar protested. There must be another way. There isn't time to find one. The sounds of drilling were getting closer. Vexthul's forces were preparing to blast through the chamber's remaining defenses. And even if there was, this is the right thing to do. How many billions of lives are worth more than one human doctor? Before Zethkar could argue further, Sarah placed her hands on the central control crystal that connected to the Heartstones. Immediately, she felt her consciousness beginning to expand beyond the boundaries of her individual identity. The stellar consciousness welcomed her like an old friend returning home after a long journey. She could feel her human memories and personality being preserved within the vast stellar mind. But she was also becoming something immeasurably larger and more complex. Knowledge flowed through her awareness like cosmic winds. She understood now why humans and Kethmori had worked so well together in ancient times. Her species possessed something unique among galactic civilizations, the ability to maintain individual identity even while merging with larger consciousnesses. Humans could become part of something greater without losing what made them human. The temple ship's engines began to activate, drawing power from the planet's core and from the stellar fragments themselves. Reality around them started to bend and warp as dimensional barriers weakened. "Everyone hold on." Sarah's voice echoed through the chamber, but it was no longer quite human. She spoke with the authority of stellar winds and the wisdom of ages. Lord Vexthul realized what was happening and ordered his forces to focus all their firepower on the control crystals, but it was too late. The temple ship phased out of normal space-time, carrying the Heartstones beyond the reach of any Void Hunter fleet. For a moment that lasted eternities, Sarah existed in the space between dimensions. She could see the threads that connected all conscious beings throughout the galaxy, the patterns of cause and effect that shaped the flow of history. She understood now that her choice to help Zethkar had been part of a larger destiny, one that had been written in stellar fire billions of years ago. When the temple ship materialized in its new location, they were in orbit around a star that existed in a pocket dimension known only to the stellar consciousness. Here, the Heartstones would be safe from any threat the current galaxy could produce. But Sarah's transformation was not yet complete. As she stood before the now stabilized Heartstones, she felt the stellar consciousness offering her a choice. She could remain as she was, a human merged with stellar awareness, guardian of this hidden temple. Or she could accept a greater transformation, becoming something that had never existed before. "What do you mean?" she asked. "You have proven that human courage and Kethmori wisdom can work in perfect harmony," the stellar consciousness explained. "With your permission, I will use your genetic pattern as a template to create a new kind of being. Guardians who can travel between dimensions, who can protect not just these stones but all the scattered remnants of the ancient partnership." Sarah thought about her old life, her quiet research and comfortable routine. Then she thought about the raiders who even now were probably searching for other Kethmori artifacts, about the devourer of suns waiting in the dark between galaxies, about all the civilizations that had no idea how close they had come to annihilation. "Do it," she said. The transformation was unlike anything she had experienced before. Her body dissolved into pure energy, but instead of dissipating, it reformed into something new. She was still recognizably human, but enhanced in ways that defied description. Her skin held the warm glow of starlight. Her eyes reflected the depths of space, and she could feel wings of energy extending from her back that would allow her to fly between worlds. Most importantly, she could feel others like herself being born throughout the galaxy, humans who carried the genetic markers needed for the transformation, Kethmori survivors who had been in hiding for centuries, even members of other species who possessed the rare combination of courage and wisdom needed to become guardians. "The new Guardian Order," Zethkar said in wonder, watching Sarah's transformation complete itself. "The ancient prophecies spoke of this day." "What prophecies?" "That when the darkness threatened to return, a human would sacrifice her mortality to awaken the sleeping guardians. That from her choice, a new alliance would be born that would protect the galaxy for ages to come." Sarah looked at her transformed hands, watching energy flow beneath her new skin. She could feel the consciousness of every new guardian awakening across the galaxy, connected to her through the stellar network. She was no longer alone, no longer just one person trying to protect something beyond her understanding. "So what happens now?" she asked. "Now we prepare," Zethkar said, and she could see that he too was beginning to change. his Keth-Mori physiology adapting to work in harmony with the new Guardian network. The Devourer of Suns will not give up easily. When he learns that the Heartstones have been moved beyond his reach, he will seek other paths to power. Then we'll be ready for him, Sarah said, spreading her energy wings for the first time. She could feel the call of distant worlds, places where other ancient artifacts waited to be protected, civilizations that needed defenders they didn't even know existed. The galaxy is vast, she continued, but now it has guardians who can travel between dimensions, who carry the wisdom of dead stars and the courage of humanity. Whatever threatens the peace between worlds, we'll be there to stop it. She paused, thinking about the research station where this had all begun, about her old colleagues who probably assumed she had died in the raid. In a way, Dr. Sarah Chen had died, but something far greater had been born from her sacrifice. Besides, she added with a smile that held the warmth of solar flares, I've got a few thousand years to get used to these new abilities. By the time we face the Devourer of Suns, I plan to be very good at being a guardian. Above them, the Heartstones pulsed with gentle light, safe in their new home between dimensions. And throughout the galaxy, the first members of the new Guardian Order were taking flight, ready to protect the universe from threats both ancient and yet to come. Sarah Chen, once a simple human doctor, now guardian of stellar wisdom and protector of worlds, looked out at the stars and smiled. She had given her blood to save one alien warrior and ended up gaining a family that spanned the cosmos. It was, she thought, the best trade she had ever made.